Saturn's rings aren't just ice and rock. There's a real field of science called chronoseismology, named after the Greek god of time, where planetary scientists read Saturn's rings like grooves on a vinyl record. The planet's internal vibrations carve spiral density waves into the ring material, and researchers decode them like tree rings. That's published in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society. That's mainstream. Now, here's where it gets strange. In 1986, a NASA lineage scientist claimed something else was writing to the rings. And 40 years later, several of the things he pointed at still have no explanation. Norman Berggren was not a crank. 12 years as a research scientist at NACA Ames, the organization that became NASA. 13 years at Lockheed, managing test planning for the Polaris missile program. California's Engineer of the Year in 1978. He's on the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum's Wall of Honor. In 1986, he published The Ring Makers of Saturn. He'd analyzed Voyager photographs of the rings and claimed to identify cylindrical vehicles up to 4,700 kilometers long, a third the diameter of Earth, operating inside the ring system. He said the rings themselves were their exhaust. He called Saturn a polluted parking lot. Now, the criticism is legitimate. He was studying copies of copies, magazine reproductions under a microscope. His spacecraft don't appear in other versions of the same images. Some were probably just the moons Prometheus and Dion blurred. His methodology was flawed, but set Berggren aside and look at what the missions themselves found. Ring spokes, radial features up to 20,000 kilometers long that appear, rotate with the rings, and vanish. Discovered in 1981. 44 years later, still no confirmed mechanism. Propeller moonlets in the A ring that drift in ways no known model predicts. Non-Keplerian motion in a Keplerian system. Vertical structures 4 kilometers tall as the Rockies, rising out of rings that are supposed to be 30 feet thick. A previously unknown type of radio emission from Saturn found hiding in Cassini data 5 years after the mission ended. And most of the B-ring structure, quote, a tremendous amount of structure on all scales, has no identified gravitational cause at all. Here's the part that reframes everything. Chronoseismology proves the rings are a recording medium. Saturn's internal oscillations write information into the ring structure, and scientists read it back. One 2022 paper is literally titled Reading the Recent History of Saturn's Gravity Field in Its Rings, a two-dimensional surface encoding the history of a three-dimensional planet. So Berggren said the rings are a medium being actively written to. Mainstream science says they're a medium being passively written to. Both agree the rings are a recording medium. The only disagreement is who or what is doing the writing, and the rings might be new. Cassini's dust measurements suggest they're only 10 to 100 million years old, younger than the dinosaurs, and they're dissolving into Saturn at 10,000 kilograms per second. Something created them recently. Something is erasing them now, and in between, they're recording. The ancients named this planet after the god of time, Kronos, the devourer, the keeper of records, and now our own science reads the planet's history from its rings. One credentialed aerospace scientist spent his final decades saying he saw something in the rings that everyone else was trained not to see. His method was flawed. His conclusions may have been wrong, but his core intuition that the rings encode something is now confirmed by mainstream science under a different name. The data is public, 400,000 raw Cassini images, free on NASA's site. Berggren's book is on Internet Archive. The chronoseismology papers are on archive. Go look, because the biggest obstacle to understanding Saturn isn't distance, and it isn't technology. It's the assumption that we already know what we're looking at. Subscribe if you want more. I'm pulling on this thread.